Over 7,000 years ago, the first wine was made, and it was probably made by accident. In a cave somewhere, someone's grape juice started to go bad, and then it got worse, and then it got kind of good. And in the thousands of years since this happy discovery, wine has woven its way into our daily lives, from ritual and ceremony to celebration. But it wasn't until the 1800s that we realized we owe it all to these tiny, microscopic organisms called yeast. You might know yeast is the thing that makes your bread rise or ferments your beer or your wine, but there are actually dozens of species of yeast that live out in the vineyard and can eventually get into a wine cellar and make all kinds of changes to your wine. Yeast don't just turn sugar into alcohol, they can produce hundreds of different chemicals, each of which has a different taste or smell. And these yeasts can come together to form a community while they're fermenting wine. And the result is that different yeast communities can create wines with different aroma and flavor characteristics. Characteristics like pears or roses or even vinegar. So you can see how important it is for us to know exactly which yeasts are making our wines, because they can make all the difference between an award-winning wine and a wine that gets poured down the drain. My research is all about figuring out which yeasts are in the fermentations at local wineries and which make the best tasting wines. I take wine samples from actively fermenting tanks and barrels at local wineries and I bring them back to the lab for analysis. I use the latest molecular technologies to compare the DNA fingerprints of different yeasts to tell them apart from each other. The result is that I can use these fingerprints to figure out the yeast communities in these wines, which can help me predict how a wine's going to end up tasting and smelling. Of course, winemakers want to produce good wines with low risk, and this often means that they buy their yeast from a company and add it to their grape juice to kickstart fermentation. The problem with this is that most of these yeasts come from places like Italy or France, and if everyone uses the same yeast, the wines can start to taste similar. But you and I want to pour ourselves a glass of wine that reminds us of the region that it came from, and part of this identity has to do with the yeasts that are naturally found in that region. Studying the yeasts that are in the vineyards and wineries around us has let me identify which yeasts are native to the Okanagan Valley. And I'm working with winemakers to help develop techniques that will let native yeasts thrive in their wines. My hope is that I can help our wine region develop its own unique identity. So when you open a bottle of Okanagan wine, it tastes like home. Thank you.